Hi everybody, my name is Cheyenne. The book I chose was Pinocchio. I chose this book because it was in my kid's library and I used to like it as a kid. So, this book specifically was published in 2012 by a group of publishers named Paragon, which is a Disney publisher. This type of book is a children's literature picture book because it's got plenty of pictures inside of here. It doesn't have any chapter headings, which makes it a perfect children's book. It's mainly for age range 4 to 8. The author actually reveals the character through a narration because this is a third person omnipresent point of view. There's no bias. The characters are very convincing and credible, and there's no really cause of behavior that the author shows. The book tells a very good story. It's about a little boy who was originally a puppet. He had to prove that he could be humane by being honest, being unselfish, and being trustworthy, honestly. The story does move quite a bit. It goes from one part to the other very easily. The style of it is very appropriate to the subject. It's more straightforward than figurative. There's not really much figuratism in here. The dialogue is very natural, but there's not really a whole lot in here. There is a basis of cause and effect in this, and it foreshadows a lot. The story takes place in a village. Sometimes it's in the day, sometimes it's in the night. You can tell which time it is by the pictures mainly, but at the very beginning you can tell it's night because it talks about the evening stars. The setting makes it easier to tell what's going on because it makes things more reliable. The point of view does not change during the book. It's all the narrator. Which I think this point of view enlarges it because there's no bias. The story does have a theme, which is to be human, you've got to have some type of morals. It is worth imparting to children because we need to teach our children this. The theme emerges naturally, and it does not overpower the story. The illustrations, they enhance the story. It just kind of gives you a little thought of what's going on during that page. And it actually draws the reader's attention. The book kind of compares to the others because they all kind of have a moral to the story. They're just different stories. And others review this book. They say it's the perfect book for a kid because it's got pictures, it's easy to read, everything else. And I think the age range that would appreciate this the most would probably be around 4 to 11. Alright, now I'm going to read the story to you. Alright. Our characters we have are Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio, Geppetto, Blue Fairy, Figaro, and Cleo. Disney's Pinocchio, a magical story. Once upon a time, in a quaint little village, a beautiful wishing star shone brightly in the evening sky. A cricket named Jiminy wandered along the village streets. He spotted a lighted window and went inside. Jiminy Cricket looked around, amazed. He had stumbled on a woodcarver's shop full of fantastic clocks, cute little music boxes, and shelf after shelf of toys. The shop belonged to kindly old Geppetto. Jiminy watched as Geppetto took his paintbrush and carefully painted eyebrows and a mouth onto a small wooden puppet. Figaro, his cat, and Cleo, his goldfish, watched as he worked. "I have just the name for you," Geppetto said when he was finished. "Pinocchio!" He took Pinocchio on a little walk around his shop, balancing the puppet on his strings. Later, Geppetto and Figaro climbed into bed. Geppetto gazed out the window and looked up at the sky. "It's a wishing star!" he cried. Then he made a wish. As Geppetto slept, he dreamed about his wish. He had wished that Pinocchio might be a real boy. Suddenly, a bright, brilliant light filled the room. It sparkled and grew into the beautiful blue fairy. "Good, Geppetto," the fairy said. "You deserve to have your wish come true." She waved her magic wand over Pinocchio, saying, "Little puppet made of pine, awake, the gift is thine." "Am I a real boy?" Pinocchio asked. "Not yet," the fairy explained. "First you must prove yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish. You must learn to choose between right and wrong." The blue fairy told Pinocchio that he must let his conscience be his guide. And, with a little coaxing from the blue fairy, Jiminy Cricket agreed to be his conscience. Then she was gone. Geppetto, hearing strange noises, jumped out of bed. When he got to his workshop, he saw his little puppet dancing around and singing. Overjoyed, Geppetto lifted Pinocchio into the air and hugged him close. The next morning, Geppetto walked Pinocchio outside and pointed to all the children passing by. "They are going to school," he explained. "Now that you are a little boy, you must go to school too." Hoping to make Geppetto proud, Pinocchio hurried off. He didn't realize that two sneaking-looking characters were watching him. "A live puppet with no strings," the fox explained. "We can sell him to Stromboli the puppeteer." The fox tripped Pinocchio, and with his cane. "I am J. Worthington Foulfellow, but my friends call me Honest John," he explained. "And this is Gideon," he added, pointing to the cat standing next to him. Pinocchio looked up at Honest John. "I have to get to school," he explained. Honest John convinced Pinocchio that school was a waste of time. "Come with us," he coaxed. "We'll make you a star." Back at Geppetto's workshop, Jiminy Cricket hurried on into his coat and hat and ran out the door to follow Pinocchio to school. He saw Honest John, Gideon, and Pinocchio heading down the street in the wrong direction. Soon Jiminy Cricket caught up with Pinocchio and tried to change his mind, but it was too late. Honest John had convinced Pinocchio to go on stage. They were going to see Stromboli the puppeteer. Honest John led Pinocchio right into Stromboli's greedy hands. That night, Pinocchio made his stage debut with Jiminy Cricket in the audience. Everyone was amazed to see a singing and dancing puppet with no strings. When the show was over, the crowd applauded wildly and threw gold coins at Pinocchio's feet. Pinocchio loved all the attention, and Stromboli loved all the money that little puppet had made him. Later that night, Pinocchio couldn't wait to get home and tell Geppetto all about his new career. When Stromboli heard Pinocchio talking about going home, he threw him in a cage and locked the door. As Pinocchio cried and called out for Jiminy, the cricket sneaked into Stromboli's wagon. Jiminy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Pinocchio locked into a cage. As Jiminy was trying to free Pinocchio, the blue fairy appeared. When she asked Pinocchio why he hadn't gone to school, Pinocchio told so many lies that his nose grew. Realizing what he had done wrong, Pinocchio promised that he would never lie again. The blue fairy agreed to give him another chance and set him free, before despairing once more. Jiminy and Pinocchio jumped down from the cage and ran home as fast as they could. Knowing how worried Geppetto would be, he had been out all night looking for Pinocchio. In a nearby tavern, Honest John and Gideon were meeting with a dastardly coachman who had an evil scheme to lure boys into Pleasure Island. The coachman promised Honest John and Gideon lots of money if they would help him find some boys.